I was 12 years old when fear first sat beside me like a shadow that refused to leave. My name is Rahim, and I grew up on a narrow street in Kabul, Afghanistan, in a small compound at House 14, near Kartsay. The walls of our home were cracked from years of tension and silence, but that day, even the walls seemed to tremble. It began in the late afternoon. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the dusty road. I remember hearing voices before I saw anything, angry voices, loud, sharp, cutting through the quiet like broken glass. I was sitting outside, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick, when my older cousin Farid grabbed my arm tightly. His fingers were shaking. "Come inside," he whispered, but his voice carried fear, not authority. I pulled away, slightly confused. That's when I saw them. 3 women sisters from the next compound were being dragged by their uncle. I knew them. Everyone did. Amina, the oldest, always smiled when she passed our house. Layla, quiet and gentle, used to give me bread when my mother was sick. And the youngest, Mariam, she was barely older than my sister. But that day there was no smile, no kindness, only tears. They were all dressed in white, but not the joyful kind of white you see at celebrations. Their clothes looked forced upon them, heavy, like chains made of cloth. Their faces were wet with tears, and their eyes, I had never seen eyes like that before. It was like they were screaming without making a sound. Behind them stood a man, an imam from a nearby district. I had seen him once or twice, but never this close. His face was hard, unmoved, like stone. The men around him spoke in low, serious tones, as if something important was being decided. I didn't understand everything, but I heard enough. They were being forced to marry him, all 3 of them. My chest tightened. I looked at Farid, hoping he would say something, explain something, but he just pulled me harder. "This is not for us to question," he muttered, but something inside me refused to stay quiet. That night I couldn't sleep. The cries of those women echoed in my head over and over again. I kept seeing Miriam's face, the way she looked back as if hoping someone, anyone, would stop it. I lay on the thin mat beside my younger brother, staring at the ceiling. My heart felt heavy, like I was carrying something too big for me, and then something strange happened. In the middle of the night I felt a presence, not something I could see clearly, but something I could feel deep inside me. It was calm, yet powerful, gentle but firm. I didn't hear words with my ears, but inside me, I understood something. It was as if I was being told that what I saw was not right, that there was a truth greater than fear, that there was a way of freedom I had never known. I sat up, breathing heavily. For the first time in my life, I questioned everything. And I didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of a journey that would change not just me, but many others far beyond my small street in Kabul. The morning after felt heavier than any day I had ever known, as though the air itself had become thick with something unseen. I woke up before the call to prayer, my eyes already open, my mind restless. Normally I would stretch, listen to the early sounds of our street, and prepare for another ordinary day, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. The image of Amina, Layla, and Mariam stayed with me, not fading like a dream but growing sharper, more painful. It was as if their sorrow had entered my heart and refused to leave. As I stepped outside, the sky was still pale, just beginning to turn from dark blue to soft orange. A few men walked quietly toward the mosque, their footsteps steady, their faces calm. I wondered how everything could look so normal when something so wrong had just happened. My feet felt heavy as I walked to fetch water from the shared tap down the street. Every familiar corner now felt different, like I was seeing my neighborhood for the first time. I kept asking myself a question I had never dared to ask before. Why did no one stop it? Why did all the adults, all the strong men, just stand there and allow those girls to be taken like that? I had always believed that the elders knew what was right, that they followed truth without question. But now, that belief was shaking inside me. When I returned home, my mother was kneading dough in the small kitchen area. Her hands moved quickly, skillfully, but her face looked tired. I stood there for a moment, watching her, unsure if I should speak. Finally, I gathered courage and asked her about the 3 sisters. The moment I mentioned them, her hands slowed down, and she avoided my eyes. She told me in a quiet voice that some things are not for children to understand, that life is full of decisions made by those in authority, and that questioning them could bring trouble. She said it was better to focus on our own lives, to stay quiet, to stay safe, but her voice did not carry peace, it carried fear. That fear settled into me, but it did not silence the question growing in my heart. Later that day, I passed by their compound again. The gate was shut tightly, and everything was unusually quiet. No laughter, no voices, no movement. It felt like the life had been pulled out of that place. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the closed door, hoping something would change, hoping someone would come out and say it was all a mistake. That was when I heard a faint sound from inside, like someone crying softly. It was not loud, but it was enough. My chest tightened again, and I felt something rise inside me, something I could not explain. It was not just sadness, it was something deeper, like a longing for justice, for truth, for something pure that I had never fully known. That evening I sat alone on the roof of our house, looking out over the city. The call to prayer echoed from different mosques, overlapping in a way that usually brought comfort, but that night it felt distant. My mind was full of thoughts I could not control. I began to wonder if there was more to God than what I had been taught, not in a rebellious way, but in a searching way, like someone looking for light in a dark place. As the sky turned dark and the stars began to appear, that same presence I felt the night before returned, even stronger this time. It was not frightening, it was peaceful, almost like a warm hand resting on my heart. Again, I did not hear words with my ears, but deep inside me, I began to understand something. It felt like I was being shown that truth is not always where people say it is, and that sometimes, even when many agree on something, it can still be wrong. I felt a gentle pull, like an invitation, not forced, but clear. It was as if I was being told to seek, to ask, to not ignore what I had seen and felt. I did not know who was speaking to me in that moment, but I knew one thing for sure. I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. Something had started inside me, a question that would not go away, and that question was simple yet powerful. What is the real truth? That night I whispered a quiet prayer, not one I had memorized, but one that came from my heart. I asked God to show me what is right, to guide me, even if it meant going into places I had never been before. I did not know that this small prayer would open a door to something far greater than I could imagine, something that would bring both danger and hope, fear and courage, darkness and light. The days that followed did not bring peace to my heart. Instead, they made everything more intense, as though the question inside me was growing louder with each passing moment. I tried to return to my normal routine, helping my mother, running small errands, and spending time with my younger brother, but nothing felt the same anymore. Even the smallest things reminded me of what I had seen. Every time I passed the street where the three sisters lived, I slowed down without thinking, hoping to catch a glimpse of them, hoping for some sign that they were okay, but the gate remained shut. And the silence behind it felt heavier than before. One afternoon, while returning from the market, I decided to take a different route, one that passed behind a row of older buildings near the edge of our neighborhood. It was not a path I usually took, mostly because my mother had warned me to stay away from that area. She said it was not safe, that strange things happened there, and that it was better for children to keep to the main roads. But something inside me, that same quiet pull I had been feeling, urged me to go that way. It was not a loud command or a forceful push, but a gentle insistence that I could not ignore. As I walked along the narrow path, the noise of the main street faded behind me, replaced by a strange stillness. The buildings here were older, their walls worn and marked by time, and the air felt different, quieter, almost as if it was holding a secret. My footsteps echoed softly as I moved forward, my heart beating faster with each step. I did not know what I was looking for, but I felt like I was being led somewhere. Then I saw it, a small wooden door, slightly open, set into the side of one of the buildings. It did not look like anything special, but there was something about it that caught my attention. I stopped and stared at it for a moment, my mind telling me to keep walking, to go back, but my heart felt drawn to it. I looked around to make sure no one was watching, then slowly moved closer. From inside, I could hear voices, low and careful, as if the people speaking were trying not to be heard. I hesitated, my hand hovering near the door. I remembered my mother's warning, the fear in her voice when she spoke about this area, but the question inside me, the one that had been growing since that day, pushed me forward. I gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small and dimly lit, with only a few lamps casting a soft glow. There were about 6 or 7 people sitting close together, men and women, their faces serious but calm. They all turned to look at me at once, and for a moment I froze. I felt like I had walked into something I was not supposed to see. An older man with kind eyes and a quiet presence stood up slowly and walked toward me. His name, I later learned, was Harun. He did not look angry or afraid. Instead, he looked at me with a kind of understanding that made me feel both nervous and safe at the same time. He asked me gently what I was doing there, his voice calm but careful. I struggled to find the right words at first, but then everything I had been holding inside began to come out. I told him about the three sisters, about what I had seen, about the question that would not leave my heart. I told him that I did not understand why something that felt so wrong could be accepted as right. My voice shook as I spoke, but I could not stop. The room became very quiet as I finished. The people there looked at one another, and I could see something in their eyes, something like recognition, as if they understood exactly what I was feeling. Harun nodded slowly, then motioned for me to sit down. What happened next changed everything. He began to speak, not loudly, but with a calm certainty that felt different from anything I had heard before. He did not argue or criticize. Instead, he spoke about truth, about love, about a God who sees every injustice and cares deeply about every person. As he spoke, something inside me stirred, something that felt both new and familiar at the same time. Then he mentioned a name I had heard before, but never really understood. He spoke about Jesus, not just as a prophet, but as someone who reveals the heart of God in a way that is full of compassion and truth. He explained that Jesus stood for the broken, the oppressed, and those who had no voice. He said that Jesus brings freedom not through force, but through love and truth. As I listened, my heart began to beat faster. It was as if the presence I had been feeling, the one that came to me in the night, was now becoming clearer. I did not hear a voice with my ears, but deep inside, it felt like I was being shown something, like a light was slowly turning on in a dark room. It felt like he reveals to me that what I witnessed with the three sisters was not the will of God, but the result of brokenness in the world. It felt like he let me know that true faith does not force, does not harm, and does not silence the weak. Instead, it protects, it restores, and it brings hope. I sat there overwhelmed, not fully understanding everything, but knowing that something important was happening. For the first time since that terrible day, I felt a small sense of peace, like I was finally beginning to see a path forward. But even as that peace settled in, a new fear began to rise. I knew that what I had just stepped into was dangerous. This was not something openly accepted in my community. Being in that room, listening to those words, could bring serious consequences if anyone found out. Harun seemed to sense my fear. He placed his hand gently on my shoulder and told me, in a quiet and careful way, that following truth often comes with a cost, but that the truth itself is worth more than anything we might lose. As I left that small room and stepped back into the fading light of the evening, my heart was full, my mind racing. I knew I could not go back to the way things were before. I had seen something, heard something, felt something that I could not ignore. The question in my heart had not disappeared, but now it had direction. And I was beginning to understand that the journey ahead would not be easy, but it would be real. From the moment I left that small room, something inside me refused to go back to sleep. It was as if a seed had been planted deep in my heart, and even though I did not fully understand it, I could feel it growing slowly, quietly, but strongly. The streets I walked every day, the voices I heard, even the prayers I had memorized all began to feel different, not because they had changed, but because I was beginning to see them through new eyes. That evening, as I returned home, I tried my best to act normal. My mother was preparing food, my younger brother was playing with a broken toy in the corner, and everything looked just as it always had. But inside me, there was a storm of thoughts. I kept hearing the words Harun had spoken, especially about truth, love, and a God who sees the pain of the oppressed. I kept thinking about the three sisters, and for the first time, instead of feeling only helplessness, I felt something else beginning to rise alongside it, something like hope. Even though I did not yet know what to do with it. That night I could not sleep again. I lay on my mat, staring into the darkness, but this time it was not fear that filled my heart. It was a deep hunger to understand more. I did not know how to pray in this new way I was beginning to feel, so I simply spoke quietly in my heart, asking God to show me the truth, to guide me, to not leave me in confusion. I did not use any formal words, I just spoke honestly, like a child asking for help. As the night grew deeper, that same presence I had felt before returned, but stronger and clearer than ever. It was gentle, not overwhelming, but it carried a kind of authority that I could not explain. It felt like peace was wrapping around my thoughts, calming the questions that had been running wild inside me. And in that moment, it was as if something was being revealed to me again, not through sound, but through understanding. It felt like he reveals to me that I am not alone in what I am feeling, that there are many others, even in places like mine, who are quietly searching for truth. It felt like he let me know that there is a movement, not loud or visible, but real and growing, where hearts are turning, where people are beginning to see beyond fear and tradition into something deeper. The idea that this was not just about me, but about many others, made my heart beat faster. The next day, I found myself thinking constantly about going back to that hidden room. At first, I tried to resist the thought, telling myself it was too dangerous, that I should forget what I had seen and heard, but the more I tried to push it away, the stronger the desire became. It was not just curiosity, it felt like a need, like I was being drawn to something important for my life. A few days later, I made my decision. I told my mother I was going to help a friend with an errand, and I took the same narrow path again, my heart pounding with every step. This time, I did not hesitate at the door. I knocked softly, and after a moment it opened. Haroun stood there, and when he saw me, there was no surprise in his eyes, only a quiet welcome, as if he had been expecting me. Inside, the room felt warmer than before, not just physically, but in a way I could not fully explain. The people greeted me with gentle smiles, and I felt a strange sense of belonging, even though I had only met them once. I sat down among them, my heart open, ready to listen. This time they spoke more deeply. They shared stories, not stories of comfort and ease, but stories of struggle, of fear, and of courage. Some of them had faced rejection from their families, others had lost their homes, and a few had even been threatened because of what they believed. But in all their stories, there was something that stood out clearly, something that I could not ignore. They all spoke about a peace they had found, a peace that remained even in the middle of suffering. As I listened, I realized that this was not just about learning something new. It was about a transformation that was happening inside people, something real and powerful. They spoke about Jesus again, about how he changes hearts, how he brings freedom not by force, but by truth that reaches deep into a person's soul. As they spoke, I felt that same inner stirring again, stronger than before. It felt like he reveals to me that this truth is not something to be hidden forever, that it is like a light meant to shine, even in the darkest places. It felt like he told me that even in nations where fear has ruled for so long, something new is beginning to rise, something that cannot be easily stopped. I began to see a bigger picture forming in my mind. What I had witnessed with the three sisters was not just a single event. It was part of a larger brokenness, a system where fear and control had taken the place of compassion and truth. But what I was now discovering felt like the beginning of something different, something that could bring change, even if it started in small, hidden places like that room. Before I left that day, Haroun spoke to me again, his voice calm but serious. He told me that this path I was beginning to walk would require courage, that I would have to be wise, careful, and patient. He reminded me that truth is not always accepted easily, especially in places where people are used to living in fear. But he also said that truth has a way of growing, even in the hardest ground. As I stepped out into the evening light once more, I felt both excited and afraid. I knew that my life was changing, even if no one else could see it yet. The hidden truth inside me was growing, and I could not stop it, even if I wanted to. And deep inside, I was beginning to sense that this journey was not just about me finding answers, but about something much greater, something that could touch many lives. Even in a land where hope seemed impossible. It did not take long before the quiet change inside me began to show on the outside, even though I tried my best to hide it. I became more withdrawn, more thoughtful, and sometimes I would pause in the middle of a task, lost in the things I had heard and felt in that small hidden room. My mother noticed first. She would look at me for a few seconds longer than usual, as if trying to understand what had changed, but she did not ask questions right away. The real moment came one evening, just after sunset. I had returned from another visit to Haroun and the others, and although I had been careful, something felt different that night. As I approached our house, I saw two men standing near the entrance, speaking in low voices with my uncle. Their faces were serious, and the moment they saw me, they stopped talking. My heart dropped immediately. I greeted them politely and tried to walk past, but one of them called my name. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made my chest tighten. He asked where I had been, and for a moment I froze. I had prepared answers in my mind before, simple excuses, but in that moment everything felt tangled. I managed to say I had been helping a friend, keeping my eyes low, trying not to show fear. He looked at me for a few seconds, longer than felt normal, then nodded slowly. But I could tell he did not fully believe me. That night the atmosphere in the house changed. My uncle spoke in hushed tones with my mother, and although I could not hear everything, I caught enough words to understand that there were suspicions. Someone had seen me near the old buildings. Someone had noticed I was not where I was supposed to be. Fear settled into my chest like a heavy stone. I lay on my mat that night, my body still, but my mind racing. For the first time since this journey began, I felt the real danger of what I was doing. This was no longer just about questions and quiet discoveries. This was something that could bring trouble to my family, something that could change everything. I began to wonder if I should stop. If I should stay away from that place, forget everything I had heard, and return to the life I knew before. The fear was strong, and it spoke loudly in my thoughts. But in the middle of that fear, that same calm presence came again. It was not forceful, but it was steady. It felt like he reveals to me that fear will always try to stop truth from growing, but that fear does not have the final say. It felt like he let me know that I must be wise, but I must not turn back from what I have seen. My breathing slowly became calm again. The fear did not completely disappear, but it no longer controlled me the way it had a few moments before. The next morning, my mother finally spoke to me directly. She asked me where I had really been going, her voice soft but serious. I could see the concern in her eyes, not anger but fear for me. For a moment I wanted to tell her everything, to share what I had discovered, but something held me back. I knew the risk, not just for me, but for her as well. So I told her only part of the truth. I said I had been thinking a lot, that I was trying to understand things, that I needed time. She looked at me carefully, as if searching for something deeper, but in the end, she only nodded and told me to be careful, her voice filled with quiet worry. As the day went on, I realized something clearly. This journey was no longer hidden in a safe place inside me. It had reached my doorstep. Fear had found me, but so had something stronger. And I knew that from this point forward, every step I took would matter more than ever before. A few nights after the tension in my house began, something happened that I could not explain in ordinary words, yet it felt more real than anything I had ever experienced before. The fear had not left completely, and I had become more careful with my movements, speaking less, observing more, and trying not to draw attention to myself, but inside me. The hunger for truth had only grown stronger. It was no longer just a question, it felt like a deep need, like I could not go back even if I wanted to. That night the power in our area had gone out, which was not unusual, and the whole neighborhood was covered in darkness except for a few dim lanterns flickering in the distance. My family had already gone to sleep, and I lay quietly on my mat, listening to the distant sounds of dogs barking and the soft wind moving against the walls. My eyes were open, but I was not fully focused on anything around me, because my thoughts were deep and heavy. Without warning, that familiar presence came again, but this time it was stronger, clearer, and closer than ever before. It did not feel like something outside of me. It felt like it was surrounding me and filling the space around my heart at the same time. I was not afraid, even though I knew something unusual was happening. Instead, I felt a deep calm, the kind that quiets every other voice inside you. In that moment, it felt like everything I had been struggling to understand was being gently opened before me. It felt like he reveals to me that truth is not just something to learn, but something that changes who you are from the inside. It felt like he told me that Jesus is not distant, not unreachable, but near to those who are searching with a sincere heart, even in places where his name is not openly spoken. I began to understand that what I had been feeling all along was not confusion, but a calling to something real and living. As I lay there, my heart began to feel lighter, as if a weight I did not fully recognize before was being lifted. I started to see clearly that what happened to the three sisters was part of a broken world, but it was not the final story. It felt like he let me know that there is a greater plan unfolding, one where light begins to enter even the darkest places, not with noise and force, but quietly. through hearts that are willing to receive truth. Then something even deeper settled into me. It felt like he reveals to me that this awakening is not only for me, but for many others across nations like mine, places where fear has ruled for so long. It felt like he let me understand that there are people in different cities, different homes, even in secret places, who are beginning to see the same light, who are waking up to the same truth. The thought of that filled me with both wonder and strength, because it meant I was not alone in this journey. I did not see a clear figure, and I did not hear a physical voice, but the understanding was so strong that it stayed with me even after the moment passed. It was like something had been written inside my heart, something I could not erase even if I tried. When the presence slowly faded, the night returned to its quiet state, but I was not the same. I sat up slowly, my breathing steady, my mind clear in a way it had never been before. The fear that had once felt so heavy now seemed smaller, not completely gone, but no longer in control. I knew, without needing anyone to tell me, that my life had just reached a turning point. I could no longer walk halfway between what I had always known and what I was now discovering. I had to choose, not in a loud or sudden way, but deep inside, where it truly matters. And in that quiet moment, I made a decision in my heart to follow this truth, even if I did not yet understand where it would lead me. After that night, I began to notice that everything around me felt like it was testing the decision I had made in my heart. It was no longer just about what I believed quietly inside. It started to show in how I lived, how I spoke, and even how I reacted to things that once seemed normal to me. I tried to remain careful, remembering Harun's warning to be wise, but there was a change in me that could not be completely hidden. The first real test came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, my uncle called me to sit with him in the courtyard. His face was serious, and the way he looked at me made it clear that this was not a casual conversation. He asked me again where I had been going in recent days, but this time his tone was firmer, and there was no room for simple excuses. He told me that people had been talking, that I had been seen near places I should not be, and that in our community, such behavior could bring shame and danger not just to me, but to the whole family. As he spoke, I felt my heart beating faster, and for a moment the fear returned strongly. I knew what he was really asking, even if he did not say it directly. He wanted to know if I had been involved in something forbidden, something that could put all of us at risk. My mind raced, searching for a safe answer, something that would end the conversation quickly, but at the same time I felt a deep resistance inside me. Something that would not allow me to completely deny the truth I had begun to accept. I answered carefully, choosing my words with caution. I told him that I had been searching for understanding, that I had questions about life and about God, and that I was trying to find answers. I did not mention names or places, but I did not completely hide my desire for truth either. For a moment there was silence between us, and I could feel the weight of his gaze. He warned me strongly, telling me that there are paths that may seem right but lead to destruction, and that I should not allow myself to be influenced by ideas that go against what we have always known. He spoke from a place of concern, but also from a place of control, shaped by the beliefs he had always followed without question. I listened quietly, nodding, but inside me, something remained steady, something that refused to be shaken this time. As I left the courtyard, I realized that this was only the beginning. The pressure would not go away, it would likely increase. There would be more questions, more suspicion, and possibly even stronger consequences if I was not careful. But at the same time, I noticed something different in myself. The fear was still there, but it no longer had the same power over me as before. That evening, as I sat alone for a moment, I felt that familiar calm return. It felt like he reveals to me that faith is not proven in comfort, but in moments of pressure, when choosing truth becomes difficult. It felt like he let me know that standing firm does not always mean speaking loudly, but sometimes simply refusing to turn back, even when it would be easier to do so. I began to understand that this journey was not just about what I had experienced in quiet moments, but about how I would respond when those experiences were challenged. This was my first real test, and even though I had been afraid, I had not turned away. And deep inside, I knew that more tests would come, but so would the strength to face them. As the days passed, I started to see that what was happening to me was not something small or isolated. It began quietly, almost unnoticeable at first, but little by little, I started to recognize signs that something bigger was taking place beyond my own life. The small room where I had first met Haroon was no longer just a secret place of learning. It was becoming a place of quiet change, where hearts were being awakened in ways that could not easily be explained. Each time I returned, I noticed new faces. Some came with fear, looking over their shoulders before entering, while others came with questions similar to mine, carrying stories of things they had seen or experienced that they could not ignore. One man shared how he had been troubled by dreams that pointed him toward truth he had never been taught. A woman spoke about a deep emptiness she had felt for years, which suddenly began to lift when she started seeking differently. Their stories were not loud or dramatic, but they were real, and I could see the change in their eyes. What surprised me the most was how this movement was spreading quietly from one person to another. No one was forcing anyone, and there was no loud announcement, but it was happening. A friend would tell a friend, a family member would whisper to another, and slowly more people began to gather, not out of pressure, but out of a deep desire to understand something more. It felt like something alive was growing beneath the surface, something that could not be easily stopped because it was happening inside people's hearts. One evening, Haroon spoke more clearly about what he believed was happening. He explained that in many places like ours, across different cities and even other nations, there were people experiencing similar awakenings. He described it as a quiet revival, not one that begins in public spaces, but one that starts in hidden rooms, in private moments, and in hearts that are open to truth. As he spoke, I felt that same inner confirmation again. It felt like he reveals to me that this is part of something greater than I can see, that even in places where truth has been hidden or resisted, it is beginning to rise again. It felt like he let me understand that this awakening is moving across lands where fear once ruled without question, and that it will continue to grow, even if it remains unseen for a time. I began to look at my surroundings differently. The streets of Kabul, the people I passed every day, even those who seemed fully committed to the life we had always known, now appeared to me as people who might also be searching deep inside, even if they did not show it. It gave me a strange sense of hope, knowing that change does not always come in ways people expect. Despite this hope, the danger had not disappeared. In fact, as more people became involved, the risk grew as well. There were whispers of others being questioned, of certain gatherings being watched more closely, and of individuals who had to leave their homes because of what they believed. The reality of the situation remained serious, and we all knew we had to be careful. But even with that, something stronger continued to grow among us. It was not loud confidence, but a steady courage, a quiet strength that came from knowing we were part of something real. It was not built on force or pressure, but on a deep conviction that truth, once discovered, cannot be easily forgotten. As I walked home that night, I realized that the fear that once controlled me had been replaced by something else. Not complete boldness, not yet, but a growing sense of purpose. I was no longer just a boy with questions. I was becoming part of something that was slowly spreading, something that could reach far beyond our small hidden room. And deep inside, I knew that this was only the beginning. It did not take long before the reality of what I was part of began to show its weight. What once felt hidden and safe started to come closer to the surface, and with it came a cost I had only heard about but never truly understood until then. The quiet revival we were experiencing was growing, but so was the attention around it, and not all of that attention was good. One afternoon, news spread through our area that a young man from a nearby street had been taken away for questioning. People whispered about him in low voices, saying he had been meeting with others in secret, asking questions that were not accepted. No one spoke openly, but everyone understood what it meant. Fear moved quickly through the community, like a wind you cannot see but can feel everywhere. When I heard this, my heart tightened. For the first time, I saw clearly that this path was not only about inner peace or personal discovery. It could lead to loss, separation, and even danger that I could not control. I thought about my mother, my younger brother, and how my choices could affect them. The weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on me. That evening when I went to the gathering, the atmosphere was different. The room was quieter, more serious. Some people were missing, and those who were there spoke carefully, choosing their words with caution. Harun reminded us again to be wise, to not act carelessly, and to understand the times we were in. But even in that seriousness, there was still something unshaken among them, something that fear could not remove. As I sat there, listening, I felt a battle inside me. One part of me wanted to step back, to protect myself and my family, to avoid trouble while I still could. But another part of me, deeper and stronger than before, held onto what I had come to know. I could not pretend I had not seen the truth. I could not erase the peace I had experienced or the understanding that had been revealed to me. In that moment of struggle, that familiar calm returned again. It felt like he reveals to me that following truth will always come with a cost, but that the cost does not mean the path is wrong. It felt like he let me know that what is being built inside me is stronger than what is happening around me, and that even when there is loss, there is also something greater being gained. I looked around the room at the others, at their faces marked by both fear and quiet strength, and I understood something clearly. None of us were here because it was easy. We were here because something real had touched our lives, something we could not deny even if we wanted to. When I left that night, the streets felt colder, the shadows longer, and the risks more real than ever before. But inside me there was also a growing firmness, a decision that was no longer weak or uncertain. I knew that this journey would ask more from me, that it would not remain hidden forever, and that I would have to stand in ways I had never imagined. But I also knew that I would not turn back. As time passed, everything I had experienced began to come together in a way that made the journey clear, even though the road ahead was still uncertain. I was no longer the same boy who sat in the dust outside his house, confused and afraid after witnessing something he could not understand. I had seen pain, I had wrestled with questions, I had faced fear, and I had encountered a truth that changed me from the inside. What started as a quiet question had become a living conviction, something steady that remained even when everything around me felt unstable. The hidden gatherings continued, though with greater caution, and the sense of awakening among us grew deeper. It was no longer just about learning or listening, it was about becoming. I began to notice small changes in myself that I could not ignore. I was more patient with my younger brother, more aware of the struggles of others, and more careful with my words. It was as if something inside me was shaping the way I lived, not by force, but by a quiet transformation that touched every part of my life. One evening, as I sat alone on the roof again, looking over the city of Kabul, I felt that familiar presence once more, calm and steady as always. In that moment, it felt like everything I had been through was being brought into focus. It felt like he reveals to me that this awakening is not only for personal comfort, but for a purpose that reaches beyond me. It felt like he let me know that even in lands where truth has been hidden under fear and control, a time is coming when hearts will continue to turn. When light will keep spreading from one life to another, quietly but powerfully. I began to understand that what I had witnessed, from the pain of the three sisters to the hidden gatherings and the growing courage among those seeking truth, was part of something larger than I could fully see. It pointed to a time where change would not be stopped by fear alone, where people across nations would begin to question, to seek, and to awaken. This understanding did not make me feel proud or special. Instead, it made me feel responsible. I realized that standing for truth does not always mean doing something big or visible. Sometimes it means holding on to what is right when no one else sees, choosing love when fear would be easier, and remaining faithful even when the cost is real. I knew I had to be wise, to protect my family, and to move carefully, but I also knew that I could not go back to who I was before. As I looked up at the night sky, I made a quiet commitment in my heart to continue on this path, to grow in understanding, and to live in a way that reflects the truth I had received. I did not know where it would lead me in the future, but I trusted that the same presence that had guided me this far would continue to lead me step by step. To anyone hearing my story, I would say this with sincerity. The journey of faith is not always easy, and it does not remove every challenge. But it brings a kind of peace and purpose that cannot be replaced by anything else. It calls for patience, for courage, and for a heart that is willing to seek truth even when it is difficult. It also calls for love, because without love, even truth can be misunderstood or misused. So I encourage every believer to remain steady, to grow in understanding, to pray with sincerity, and to study deeply, not out of routine, but out of a genuine desire to know God more. Let your life reflect kindness, even in hard situations, and do not allow fear to take the place of faith. Love one another, support one another, and remember that even the smallest light can shine brightly in the darkest place. My journey is still unfolding, but one thing I know for sure is that what began as a question has become a path, and that path is leading me forward, step by step, into a life that is no longer controlled by fear, but guided by truth.